Hey, this is my project about aviation in World War One. Just gonna jump right in and start talking about it. It was aviation World War One was like talked about by officers and stuff, and they were like, "Nah, it's really useless. I mean, like it's such a new technology, and really, there's no reason to rely on it." And honestly, in the beginning, this worked, but then became more and more clear as their normal scouts, which were men on horses, were used. They kept getting killed, and they weren't able to scout. And so aviation in World War One started by reconnaissance, and they weren't actually war machines at all. They would just fly over enemy lines and be like, "Hey, this is this is where they're at. You can attack here. There's like a place to flank here. Blah 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 blah." And other than that, there were also balloons for dropping bombs, like zeppelins, that the Germans mostly did. When the war started, they were mostly relying on cavalry for reconnaissance, and then airplanes started, and they were like amazing. They were like, "Wow, this is really working." And it got to the point where um, they would they would rely on the airplanes more than was actually reasonable. And honestly, reconnaissance actually had no warfare. Like they would pass each other by in the sky and be like, "Hi," and they would wave to each other and then kind of like smile or whatever. But then, I guess tensions started to grow, and they started throwing rocks and even grappling hooks at the other planes and grenades and things like that. And then they started carrying guns on their planes. Now, firearms were shown to be very ineffective on planes because it's really hard to shoot something while you're flying, especially like pistols where the aim wasn't really very good in the first place, and then the only other firearms were single shot rifles, so it was like kind of a waste of time. And so immediately people started trying to patent a way to put machine guns on airplanes. They had been speculated prior to the war, but weren't really taken seriously, and there was really no reason, or people saw no reason to have them. Um, and there were a lot of complications that came with mounting machine guns on airplanes. Mostly, the first and biggest one is the pilot needs to be able to reach the machine gun to shoot it. That means it's probably got to be in front of the pilot. That way he can aim the plane at what he's trying to shoot, then pull the trigger. Now, there are a lot of issues with this, mostly that the propeller is right in front of the pilot as well. So if he's like shooting through a machine gun, it's going to be hanging off the propeller, and the propeller is going to get trashed, and he's going to have to land and get a new propeller, and there's just all kinds of issues. So the first solution was to take the propeller and move it somewhere else so that they could put a machine gun in front. And this worked. I mean, the first plane they did that was the Vickers Experimental Fighting Biplane 1. But it came with its own issues. For example, putting the propeller somewhere else makes the plane slower, and other planes were able to easily overtake it, and it was just kind of disastrous. So it wasn't working very well. So they started thinking and speculating how they were going to be able to mount a machine gun where it was without, having issues, and that's where the idea of synchronization came in. Now, what synchronization exactly is where the bullets are timed to go between the propellers so that they can shoot and fly the propeller at the same place at the same time, and the bullets will only shoot when it's not going to hit the propeller. This was very hard to do, and the first way they did it is they took cams and shafts, and they took a camshaft, which is essentially, you should be able to see a picture of it. It's like a thing that rotates, and when it's in a certain position, it pushes down a lever or whatever you're pushing down, and that makes it so the gun can't shoot. So whenever the propeller would be in a certain position, you would not be able to shoot. They also tried to look into changing the guns, but most of the guns they had were like free firing guns. So basically, like the gun would had no specific set speed of how it would fire. It was very loose and not calculable. And finally, they started releasing guns with synchronization, or planes with synchronization gear. It was first dominated by Britain. They came out with the Vickers plane and things like that, and The Vickers plane was wildly successful, and they dominated the skies. But then in 1915, Germany finally released the Fokker EI, and that's not a joke. That is what is, I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. And Germany released this plane, and immediately they start dominating the skies and taking down other British planes. Um, British plane casualties were not actually that much during the war, and weren't really used as fighting that much. Uh, there were a lot. I believe there was a lot more done by Zeppelin bombing than by fighter planes, because in the beginning they were mostly used for reconnaissance. Um, but when you think about aviation in World War One, you have to consider that Zeppelins were one of the primary ways to bomb, and bombing was very not developed at all, and they didn't really have strategies. They just dropped bombs, and about like 700 people